So, welcome to the first episode of Casey Needs a Co-host, Zoomvivor edition. Today, my co-host is James, who I'm sure anyone listening to this will know. James is the creator, the host, the tour de force behind Zoomvivor. James, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, definitely. I think I wouldn't have it any other way. For the first Zoomvivor podcast, we have to have the creator. So today we're going to be going through the first nine castaways for season 5 of Zoomvivor Pangaea. Just kind of go on a little general overview, how we think they might perform in the season, just general observations. And then we'll do another podcast tomorrow on the final nine contestants.
Yeah, sounds
Um,
great.
Anything you want to say, James, before we start this at all?
Just so excited about the season in general because for the first time, we're gonna be highlighting different cultures, not only from the U.S. and the Philippines, but also from different countries. So it's very exciting to see how that will pan out, especially with a lot of people from the Latin org community, the Asian org community, and other neighboring countries. So it's gonna be exciting. Yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too. So, all right, let's get into it. So the first castaway that we have is Andres.
Mhm.
So there was no form that I could really look at, but you conducted the interview, and I also saw the interview. So what were your initial thoughts of him?
Well, Andres is of course he's from Costa Rica, yeah,
Yeah.
correct. And he is actually a risk analyst. He works as a risk
Hmm.
analyst, and he is 30 in his 30s. So I
31,
think
yes.
yeah, he's 31. He's he right off the bat in the interview, we had a sense that he is very charming. Apart from being a risk analyst, he also does a lot of TikTok, a lot of vlogging. So he's very used to being in front of the camera and having some attention. So yeah, I think he will be someone who will be sort of a social threat because of him being a charming guy. And yeah, people most likely will more of see him probably as a threat just because he is um more of an alpha male look with a beard and those eyes. And he kind of looks like the professor from Money Heist.
I actually have not seen that, so I don't know the comparison there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, when I looked at his interview, I mean, one of your producers also, mentioned he's a good-looking guy. Definitely his eyes pop out. After, watching his interview, I did a little deep dive myself and I saw, his YouTube presence and his stuff on Facebook. I mean, this guy is he's a bit of a comedian. One of his videos on YouTube, I believe, got over 23,000 views. um, I don't speak Spanish. I used to take Spanish, so I kind of picked up on some of the titles and stuff like that. I think he was the title was something like sneaking into like a stadium or something like that, a soccer
Mm-hmm.
stadium. So, and I saw some of his stuff on Facebook, and I mean, I couldn't really make out what he was saying, but you
Yeah.
can sense that energy. That energy is there, and I was laughing. I mean, part of it was the filters, but I think if given the chance, people might really like this guy. And, he does have that kind of alpha male vibe, but when you hear him speak, you don't get that sense.
Yeah. He's very
So,
endearing in a sense when he talks.
yeah, definitely. Um, I'm curious about one thing though, and I mean, you know, it was a topic in a sense that was tackled in my season of Zoomvivor, but I believe he's the only person from Costa Rica and one of the only people I think from Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
So there is going to be a little bit of a language barrier. Obviously, we have a bunch of people from around the world, and the universal language in this game is going to be English. So I'm curious if that will factor in at all to him in the game.
I think it could be, but him being from Costa Rica and other, I think they're coming into the game. There will be players who are from the same Latin or community, but he is not acquainted with. I think that will come in handy, and I think that would probably be um an easy way for him to get an alliance, probably. And of course, like there are also players I think who would be able to speak in Spanish. So I think those are the kinds of people who he will be more inclined to socializing more or making an alliance with, just because they can talk in a different language. Probably they can use it to their advantage. Also, like, but I don't think he is gonna have any problems with getting allies, because I mean, like we said, he's such a charming guy. He talks like he can get anything. He can buy the phone book. Um, so it's very hard, I think, not to like him, especially with the interview. He was just so spontaneous, even from his videos on YouTube and social media. He's a very spontaneous guy, and I think he pretty much will do anything, even if that means he's gonna use his charm, he's gonna use his sense of humor to get people to side with him.
Yeah. Now I am curious though. The one thing I couldn't gauge at all during the interview was any sort of strategic side to him.
Mm-hmm.
Socially, if given the chance, I think his social abilities will get him far into the game. It's a matter of challenges and the strategy if that can take him to the end and win it. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean
He's a very
that's
good contender for like a good social game. But as far as the strategic game, I think we just have to see what he can do strategic wise. And yeah, it's just good to see that there are players who we still don't know how they play, just so that there's this element of like surprise once we see them play, that oh, this guy is social but is also strategic, something like that.
yeah. So I guess moving on to our next castaway, we have Bads. I believe that's how you
Mhm.
say his name. He's 27. He's from the Philippines, and he's an associate lawyer. So what did you make of Bads?
Yeah, I mean, Bads is a player who has been kind of prominent in some of the Philippine orgs here, and he is known to be very strategic and very social, especially with the Filipino players. But we're very curious to see now how will he will fare in the international scene. It Survivor Pangaea being his first international game, because he's been so used to like playing with Filipinos, and so he already knows how to like get their side and be social with them. So it's a different platform for him. So I think that will be a challenge. But upon talking to him, he's more than willing to take that challenge on. He loves the challenge, and being a lawyer, I think it would help him socially as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I didn't get to see an interview of Bads at all, but looking at the forms that he filled out, I mean, he's familiar with Survivor. He's played orgs. He's played Sequester, I believe. He was a pre-merge boot in one of his seasons. Another season he quit, which that actually really popped out at me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then most of his other answers that I saw on the forums, they were pretty concise. He's outspoken. He considers himself a leader and competitive. And then with all of that, it also, he said that he's an emotional player.
Yeah.
Um, but then he also said that, he's going to try and come into this not thinking too much. So, I mean, maybe that's to try and counteract the emotional side of him.
Yeah, it's very I mean, from looking at this form, it's very complex in a sense. Like there's a lot of contradicting elements, but I think Bads could probably approach this game in an emotionless way, kind of similar to what Rain did. in Anarchy, but we'll just have to see because Bads is like Rain, for example, and some of the other players in Zoomvivor. He has a presence in a way, if you get what I mean. And he's very commanding in terms of his social game. So you'll just have to see. I'm very curious how he'll fare with the Americans, with the Latinos, because it's a totally new stage for him. So just have to see how bad fares.
Yeah, and I also saw like one of the last questions was, in all the orgs that he's ever played, he's left a mark. So hopefully
Mhm.
he makes a good mark on the Zoomvivor.
I mean,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, because yeah, I've seen his games before. He's played several orgs. And I agree, he has definitely made a mark on every game that he's played. So I think Zoomvivor will not be an exception to that because I think Bads once Bads plays an org, he always commits to it 100%. So yeah, I'm very excited for Bads. That's very excited what he can do to Survivor, it being his first international game.
All right. So moving on to our next castaway, we actually have Bing, who is kind of my favorite of what I've seen from the first nine.
Mm-hmm.
Now I wrote down quite a bit of notes for Bing. Um,
Okay.
Bing is 27. She's from the Philippines as well. Um,
Yes.
Shortly after listening to her interview, maybe it was the glasses, maybe it was her actual speech pattern, but I actually got a bit of a Jamie vibe. Now it's been a little while since I've
Yeah.
seen season three, but am I alone in saying that?
No, no, definitely not. I mean, she is she's kind of like Jamie in a way. She's very calm, cool, and collected. But you can definitely see that there's a lot of gears turning around in her head. Like, I can tell that she can be very strategic, but more on the social side. Because if I remember correctly, being played in a live Survivor game here in the Philippines, and she finished as a finalist. So I think that is kind of testament to how good she is. So in a game of Survivor where anything can happen and there's a lot of elements involved, I think it's gonna be something new to her, especially she's never seen an episode. She's never seen Zoomvivor. So I think that's a good. This is gonna be a good platform for her to start uh to start playing again because it's been a while since she last played. She considers herself basically retired before she accepted our challenge to play Zoomvivor. But yeah, it's kind of like coming out of retirement for Bing.
Yeah, I remember she said that in her last game, she made it to the final three.
Yes.
Yeah, she made it to the final three, but I guess little twist for her was it was actually a final two and she got out. And then she, I guess, because she hasn't played many orgs in general, from what I gathered and kind of what from you're telling me, but she did the final three, and then she was invited back for an All Stars where she was booted third. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, she didn't go into too much detail about that, but like I said, I got excited about her. There was something a little bit infectious about her. There was something familiar about her, and I think she probably is going to be a pretty good player. And who knows, maybe that's why they got her out on All Stars pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, when they saw, I think from basing from what I've heard from her and from the other players that she's played with, it was kind of evident that she was an early threat because playing in All Stars and basing it from the last season that she played in the same org, it was kind of she was kind of scary to be with. She was such a huge threat, and I think every one of the players in that season saw that. That's why they had kind of decided that we should get her out as soon as possible. I mean, if I was in the same position and I'm playing with her, and I know that she played that strong of a game, I mean, I would do the same.
Also, I thought it was interesting that one of her favorite players is Party, and she
Mm,
compares herself, I believe she said, to Kim Spradlin. So that was
yeah.
also pretty interesting. Um,
Yeah, because yeah, I mean when you combine like archetypes like Parvy and Kim Bradley, I mean it's kind of like a very well-rounded player. It sounds like. So I think if she compares to that, I think she would be able to personify that in the game. Let's just. I mean, I'm just hoping for the best that she does, and if she gets far, I think she will be a good contender for the title.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'm very curious to also see how I believe what she kind of described as her flaw or what people identified is that she's robotic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see if, given some time, it's been since her last org, if she, really had time to reflect and improve her game, see if she can shed that robotic side to her. Every time I think of, players like that, I think of Yule, who, kind of is very logical, but some takes kind of that emotional side out. So I mean, I'm really curious to see how she'll fare. And like I said, I think of the first 9 so far. She might be my favorite. I hope she does well. That's all I'm saying.
I think that favoritism comes from having a crush on her, Casey. I don't know.
Maybe I should turn off
Probably.
my camera for a second. No, but yeah, she really seems like someone I'm going to like. I really hope she does not get an early boot. I would love to see her go
I hope
far,
so
if not
too.
win it.
I mean, it's definitely hard given the cast so far. This, it's everyone's just so rootable at this point. Like everyone has this element that you just wanna get behind. But yeah, it's gonna be hard because this cast is very cutthroat, and apart from very cutthroat, they're very different personalities. So it's very curious to see how they'll fare.
Yeah. All right. So next up on our castaway list, we have kind of a younger player, 19 years old, from the
Mm-hmm.
Philippines. He's a student. His name is Brian. What do you make of
Yeah.
Brian?
Well, Brian. Wow. How do I start with Brian? Brian is a very when we interviewed Brian, he was very charming. I mean, he's very young. Of course, he's 19. But I think upon talking to him, his age doesn't show much because he's very eloquent, he's very concise, and he is very um he knows his words. He knows his way around getting his point across. And I think one of the good points that's gonna be both a good thing and a bad thing for him is that he has never lost the game that he's played. It's a very interesting thing to see if he will continue the streak or Zoomvivor is gonna be his first the first time that's gonna be voted out. I mean, it's a challenge for him. I don't know what he's thinking.
I mean, the odds are always stacked against people to lose.
Yeah.
There's always luck involved in any org, and especially Zoomvivor. But yeah, played twice, won twice. Um, and it's really funny for someone who's a two-time winner. He describes himself as both soft-spoken and a follower.
Probably someone like under the radar, or probably
Yeah,
someone who's like that. Probably
yeah,
because if he describes himself as a soft spoken guy, he could be either very under the radar but very strategic, I guess. But and at the same time, he could be someone who is under the radar and very social. So it could go either way. So we'll just have to see. But basing from his win streak, I'll be nervous for him. I'll be very nervous for him.
yeah. I mean, it's there's not a whole lot to go off on the form. Like it is what it is. He's a winner. He's definitely under the radar, and he's soft spoken and follower. I mean, like there's really nothing else to interpret from his form. The one thing I'm curious about though, and I mean, I assume you created the form that they all fill out. On a scale of 1 to 10, describe your play style, and he put 1. What's the scale? Can you describe the scale
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me?
So the scale, it's a scale from 1 to 10. Is how to describe their place of one being loyal and heroic, and 10 being villainous, sneaky, and betraying. So if he describes himself as one, he's very. I think we can expect something very heroic from him, and he could be someone who is very loyal to his allies, who would sacrifice some stuff for his allies, probably. We'll just have to see. People coming into past seasons have always said that they're gonna play this way, they're gonna play that way, but it never gets um it never there never is gonna be a follow through. It never happens on their end because the game is always changing. Zoomvivor is always like gonna give you something that you wouldn't expect. So I think that's this is gonna test not only their um, strategic and social game, but also their moral game in the game of Zoomvivor.
All right. Moving on to our next castaway, we have Dakota 21, who is also a student. So, what are your thoughts on Dakota?
Well, Dakota is a very he is half Hispanic. So he is half Mexican, I believe, or Spanish, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, he is from Central America, and
Oh, wait, is
yeah,
he?
he's from
Oh,
Central
I
America.
thought he was from the states. Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
I mean, yeah, from Central, but I mean, he's from Central America, but he's from the states. And yeah, he speaks Spanish, by the way, and he is very in touch with his Hispanic heritage. So I think that would come into play for him well, given that there are Latino players like Andres. And it's gonna be very interesting to see because I've seen him play on some American orgs, and he is a very charming, lovable player. So it's gonna be a challenge, I think, for him to gauge and make people like him. But I mean, his name itself is so memorable, like Dakota. So it's I think in a sense it's gonna have a presence.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I looking at his notes or the stuff that he filled out. I mean, he wanted to detail for a couple of the stuff, especially strengths and weaknesses. You know, he's an outspoken leader type. You know, he's watched Survivor. He's been playing orgs since 2014, winning quite a few of them and placing in the top 3 of 5 for a number of those orgs. I mean, you know, as far as people answering truthfully on these forums, if that portion's truthful, then the rest of it probably is truthful too. I mean, he probably goes in and just dominates these games. It says that his greatest strengths are his social skills, and he's determined. But as far as his weaknesses, he's too trusting and loyal. um so that should be interesting. I mean, we saw in our last season of Zoomvivor some pretty more, trying to think of how to word what I'm trying to say. Actually, ignore what I was just about to say. I feel like the people generally that were going to be loyal in our last season of Zoomvivor were loyal up to a certain point. I mean, I
Definitely.
ultimately think about, Rain's group of people until Garrett and Gage tried to slay her, but I mean, clearly that didn't work out for them. So I mean, hopefully, he can find a good group, and if he can find a good group that will stay loyal, maybe he will go far and once again reach the top 5 or even maybe win it all.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I mean, he is. I mean, from his interview, we've had an interview with Dakota, and he's very expressive, to put it lightly. That's I think expressive is an understatement for Dakota because he's very. I mean, he gets his emotions across. You definitely would feel him, and like it would feel like talking to him. It would feel like you're a part of his life. So it's kind of get those kinds of vibes from him that he's very like inclusive in terms of talking to people. So I think that will come into handy, I think. But in terms of him being too trusting and loyal, I mean, like you said, everyone's out for themselves in a game such as Zoomvivor. So I think he will be loyal and trusting up to a certain point. I think everyone will be that way. And yeah, it just would depend on the circumstance of the game.
Yeah, and then one last thing with him too, for someone who is too trusting and too loyal, he rated himself pretty high on the scale. He gave himself a 7 out of 10. You kind of think that, or at least in my mind, someone who leans more to the villainous side wouldn't be as trusting and as loyal. They would be a little bit more cutthroat. So that's another one of those things. I mean, we see them in all the forms or in all the interviews at one point or another, but I feel like that's a little contradictory, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's him learning from his past experience, probably, that he needs to trust players up to a certain point only, or give a pinch of salt to everything people say. Um, it's a very interesting thing to see Dakota more on the villainous side, given him being a very endearing guy. So yeah, very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I actually forgot there was because I'm going through my notes right here on the next page. There were two other things. He plans to play this game, more in a more sneaky fashion, and then he also goes to say, on why he should be on Zoomvivor, that he's someone this game has never seen before. And it's always interesting when someone makes a statement like that. I mean,
Yeah,
because like I feel like in the reality of it, when we're asked that question in any interview for any org, we kind of bullshit an answer. Let's be
yeah.
real, because I think there's thousands of people that apply for these games that archetypes are bound to cross. So
Hmm.
I mean, who knows? Maybe he will be the first of that type for Zoomvivor, and he'll give us some good entertainment.
Probably, if I'm gonna base it off of his form, he probably would be a likable villain, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely.
um, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, we could. I mean, everything in their forms, I'm taking with a pinch of salt. I'm taking it lightly because, like you said, like there's always an element of bullshit and lifting yourself up to get your name on top of the list of the cast. But yeah, we're expecting good things from Dakota, not only game wise, but I think he's very gonna be very good delivering confessionals, being very social, very expressive.
All right. So moving on to our next castaway, we have Danny, who is 21 and also from the Philippines. I actually don't have any information on Danny, so you're gonna have to take charge on this one. I'm really just gonna sit back and listen to you. What do you think of Danny?
All right. All right, so Danny Besadre is from the Philippines. She is 21. She is a corporate employee, but she is a huge fan of Survivor. She's new to the community relatively. She's played one Big Brother game that's Toast ID. So this is gonna be her first open ID game where she's gonna be playing as herself. Uh, and basing from her performance in the Big Brother game that she's played before, she has been pegged as someone who's very social, probably too social for her own good because she has been talking to everyone. It turns out everyone caught up with how social she is, so she was um, put on the block and she was evicted from the game. And yeah, I think coming into a game like Zoomvivor, I think she's gonna rely more on her social skills because I haven't seen her perform in challenges. I haven't seen her, or I haven't gotten a chance to get to know her strategically as a player. So it's she's kind of like a wild card in a sense. So we kind of won't know how she'll go, and I think that's a good thing for her because there's not gonna be no expectations. There's not the fact that she's new to the community. It just means that she has a lot of wiggle room, and there's no preconceived perceptions about her. So I think it'll be good for her. But it could also be like a double-edged sword, if you know what I mean, because
Yeah.
experience can be something that could lead you to your downfall or a lack of experiences. So it could go either way. She could get very far, or she could be voted out early. It'll depend on the game.
Okay. All right. Moving on to our next castaway, we have Erica, 22 years old, also from the States, and is a logistics broker. Now, I don't know Erica personally, but I definitely remember Erica from the comments. And I believe Erica was even at a couple of the watch parties. She's a friend of Garrett's, right?
Yes, she's a film character. I think Erica, being one of the fans of the show, she thought, I think, that she would be a good addition to a future season, such as Pangaea, because of her personality. Just by the mere fact that she's very outspoken, she expresses herself in a way that she doesn't care what other people think. She just says what she says. And yeah, I think that's gonna be very, very entertaining for the viewers and us in the production as well, because she's gonna be a lot of fun to be with. She's gonna be very fun in the confessionals, probably. Never know, but yeah, she. There are lots of people. There are lots of friends of Garrett that have applied. This is an exclusive, by the way. Um,
Heard it here,
so
exclusive.
there's a lot of players who apply that are friends of Garrett because Garrett has hosted a beer survivor game with his friends. And Erica is the only person who, out of that group of people, was accepted just so that we can maintain the sense of um, that there's no one connected really. So I think Erica being a very strong personality and who is a good female representation for the states is, I think, what put her in the cast.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta be honest here, actually. I feel like Erica is she's gonna be kind of like hit or miss, or more so she might burn out too fast. Like
Yeah.
I could see her coming in, saying some stuff, and then getting booted, or it could just hit all the right people at in the best way possible, and she can get far. I got those vibes. I mean, she seems very social. You know, she did play the beer survivor, or whatever they were calling it, with Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
And she also did a fantasy league with, I guess, Garrett as well. Um, so, I mean, yeah, so she mentioned that while she was playing those, she never really thought about the game strategically, which is actually very interesting hearing a Survivor fan say that, because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
any big Survivor fan will think about the game strategically. I mean, hell, I don't normally like talking during TV shows or especially movies, but
Yeah.
I can't help it when I'm watching Survivor. I might have to pause the TV, or pause whatever I'm watching, and I got to be like, this person's making the dumbest move ever. Like they should be doing A, B, C, or D. So yeah, it's just really interesting to hear that she didn't really think about the game strategically till then. So I was kind of thinking maybe she wasn't that big of a fan. And you even mentioned at one point asking her about Parvati, and she seemed confused of who Parvati was, but maybe she didn't hear you. But then
Mm-hmm.
she whipped out some like old, OG seasons of Survivor knowledge that some casual watcher's not going to remember from like 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
definitely.
So I guess she is a fan. She should be interesting to watch one way or another, whether she gets out pretty quick, or she makes it, long term. for some reason, I kept thinking of Nikki from season 3. Who I actually really liked
Yeah,
Nikki.
me
I
too.
liked Nikki.
Probably also someone like Kristen from your season was very big personality, very outspoken, but died out very quickly because she was too outspoken.
Well, actually, I mean, let's be real about her situation for a second. She was going to be saved. She
Mm-hmm.
was going to be saved, but if I remember correctly, like that was when she was idol. She got out, right? Who played in Idol? Boris played it for
Yes,
Karen.
she was idled out.
Yeah, I think Boris played it for Karen. So,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's a shame that that happened to her because I mean, it sucks to be swap fucked, but she looked like she was digging herself out of that. But I think we, no offense to her, but we got a more entertaining season with the Boris Karen storyline going into the merge.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Boris and Karen are characters in itself. Like, even the Karen alone, she's had a very good storyline from the start, being like tagged as an underdog, being targeted every time she goes into tribal. So I think Erica could be someone, like I said, who would be very outspoken coming in, like in the marooning. She would probably be someone who will talk to everyone or just talk over Zoom, and people are gonna be like, okay, we're gonna take a step back because this girl's kind of too taking up airtime. So but we'll have to see. I mean, because I think being a logistics broker, she talks deals with a lot of people, so I think that will come in handy for her coming into a game like with negotiations and deals. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah. Like I said, overall, I'm excited one way or another, regardless of how her
Yes, me
game
too.
goes. All right. So next up, we have Josh, who is 33 and from Canada. He is another person who I have no information on. So, James, what do you think of Josh?
All right, so Josh is he is actually from he is from Canada. He's actually a paramedic. He's also a volunteer fireman in his city, and he is uh he is a big fan of the show, but he was actually trying out to real survivor, but he was diagnosed with diabetes, so he couldn't do that anymore. So I think the closest thing that he can have from actual survivor is something like survivor, which is why he applied. He actually applied for season 3, but he chose to withdraw his position because of schedule conflicts. But I think now coming into 5, he's gonna be very interesting to watch because he's more than ready. He's very how do I describe Josh? I've talked to him. I've sent him. He sent like a video introducing himself. He's very eccentric. Yes, he's very eccentric. But he is very, in a way, uh, likable in the sense, if you get what I mean. He's eccentric but likable. Um, he might he might do well in terms of getting the more eccentric bunch of the cast, or having someone to like use as a shield probably. But yeah, it's I mean, I don't know much as well about Josh apart from what I've mentioned. So it's very interesting to have someone as eccentric and as creative and expressive as Josh. So
Hmm.
yeah,
I'm excited. I do like the eccentric type of players. In actual Survivor, like Millennials versus Gen X. I think of someone like David. Uh, David was my favorite that season, and I was pretty upset when he got voted out. But I'm hoping that he is the type of eccentric that everyone likes and is not going to be he's kind of the odd man out because I mean let's be real, that's
mm,
how the first vote typically goes, especially in these minis. Odd man out,
yeah,
it's easy just to get rid of them, so let's hope that that's not the case for him and he can make it kind of far.
yeah.
Now I mean, since there's not a whole lot left to talk about him, I am kind of curious, since he was originally going to be on season 3, who ended up taking his place for season 3?
He was actually it was actually taken by Brandon. Yeah, I believe.
Oh wow! Well, look at Brandon. That's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
he what was it? He or Josh got the Ayuda of the season. Who was that again? Josh or Brandon?
What do you mean? Sorry, can you repeat
The
that?
isn't it? Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing it. Ayuda, right?
Oh yeah, like the trade, like the hot guy of the season, something
Yes,
like
yeah,
that.
that. So I
I
can't
think
remember
it
if it
would
was.
be Brandon.
So I mean, he
I
got
think it would be
himself a little.
Brandon basing from yeah.
Yeah, he
Uh
got
huh.
himself a little bit of a name in season three because of it. Even though his first boot, I didn't exactly like him in the first episode, but I quickly grew to like him. But
Yeah, because I think coming into that first episode, he was kind of the mastermind in voting Justin out, but it kind of backfired on his end. So that's why him being from a potential villainous strategic mastermind turned out to be someone who people rooted for, especially like when he was dueling against like the players in pre-merge and deep web. So that was a good element to see from him. And Brandon, apart from him being an attractive guy, so was a pastor as well, and he was very
he's a
charming. So I
pastor.
think that kind of yes, he's a pastor.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So I think that kind of helped him in a sense for people to like him.
All right, so going on to our ninth and final castaway for this episode of the podcast, we have Kayla, who is 32 years old from Canada. She's an insurance account manager, and she also runs her own wedding planner business.
Yes.
She definitely, aside from Bing, she was probably the other person who I was kind of a favorite out of this bunch. So what do you think of her?
So I think Kayla coming into the interview, we talked to her for a few minutes. She is very spontaneous. Yes, she's very charming in a way that she is very cluttered with her thoughts, but at the same time, you kind of um, gravitate towards it because there's a certain charm to her chaos. So, and she's a mother of a three-year old, and she's also engaged. And but I mean, from first impressions, she seems very easygoing. She is a very um she hasn't got a lot of knowledge about Survivor, but she does watch other reality shows like Big Brother and The
Hmm.
Challenge per se. And yeah, I think she's very gonna be very social in a sense. So I think
Yeah,
that's more to her.
I mean, pretty much everything you just said, you hit all of my notes from the interview that I had seen of her. Um, I am curious. She ever since I believe she said November of 2019, she's played in quite a few orgs. Like she kept herself busy with these, especially I'm sure during quarantine. But the one thing I am curious about, and I mean, I got to make these comparisons so some people know what I'm talking about. I think of a player like Kristen from my season, who seemed like she was kind of wrapped up with her kids a lot. I'm curious if that's actually going to potentially cost her, quite a bit in this game. Um, I mean, obviously, you can't focus your full attention when you do have a 3-year old running around. I don't know if her husband will have off because it's the weekend. I don't know what her not her husband, her fiance. So I'm actually very curious about that, of how distracted she might be. You know.
I think from that she might it might come as a disadvantage to her, but I think she is making it making a plan as a not to have her kid be a distraction probably. Let's just hope that we won't see another problem same as what we saw from Kristen with her kid and as well as Missy for example. So let's just hope it doesn't happen again with this player.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think also with her, you can just tell in the interview she's pretty easy to talk to, all in all. So I mean, I hope, and I think that could take her pretty far. Um,
Yeah,
she seems overall pretty positive. There is something very light about her that I could see people gravitating towards. um which once again, maybe it's just the mother vibe. I don't think it is, but once again, going back to Kristen, there people were drawn to her right in the beginning of the game. So I feel like, depending on how much she takes charge, which I mean, she does describe herself as an outspoken leader, she could potentially pull people in, people gravitate towards her. She might right out the gate, come out as one of the more dominant personalities in this game. So, which then also, going to her rating, she rated herself an 8. So, maybe she misunderstood it. Maybe she does see herself as
yeah.
villainous. I don't quite know. Regardless, it should be very interesting.
I mean she. I mean coming into this game, we will never really tell how people will play these kinds of games, and especially coming into a season where you have no idea how people play. So it's something very exciting to see as a host. And this is why we always like try to put new players in just so that we have something new to show. I mean, it's gonna it's gonna be boring TV if we get to see the same archetypes over and over again. So it's kind of refreshing to have these new types of players coming in who's more of the unpredictable players, or uh, just so that we won't really expect what's gonna happen.
Yeah. And I guess just to end the notes on her, I feel like she deserves praise on this. But when she was telling the story about her one org, she played an org of 45 people and placed fourth out of the 45, which, if I remember her story correctly, her entire tribe was picked off one by one except for her closest ally. And I believe it was a he also made it really far with her. Could have been third, could have been fifth place, I don't know. But that's a really good, accomplishment, is to be in an order of 45 people, make it to fourth place while also having your entire tribe picked off. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely shows how good she is socially and strategically, maybe. But I mean, even if let's say it was 45, 40 plus people, I think that will this season of Survivor will definitely test her, even if there are just 18, because like I said, like the personalities are different now, and there's a little wiggle room, more to speak about that. So we'll just have to wait and see how she'll fare in the game.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was the first 9 castaways on our little preseason podcast. Do you have any final thoughts, James?
I think this is a good first nine. We've had like a good assessment with these people, and I think there are high expectations for all of them. So I think it's gonna be an exciting cast. I definitely would hate any one of them to go out early, but I mean the game, we never really can stop it from happening. Everyone's gonna be voted out one by one. It's just a matter of when. So yeah, I mean that's gonna be the challenge for them.
All right. Well, I guess that is it. James's final thoughts. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the podcast. Good night.